Resume the program today, and I hope everybody enjoyed that lunch. Let's give a round of applause to the staff here at the Holiday Inn. The salad was fantastic, so thank you again, Ray, and the entire staff. I just want to mention real quick and recognize two very important people. I know Robert Jones was here from AT&T, and he couldn't stay, he had to leave, but I want to recognize Robert Jones, and then also Terry Zazer, from SEMCA. Terry, are you down at, can you stand and be recognized, please? Okay, at this time, I want to introduce our presenting sponsor, BASF Corporation, and invite Mr. Greg Flum, again, the Vice President and General Manager of BASF, to the podium. Greg?
All right, thanks, Ron. I want to thank everybody for coming to this changed venue, the first time in I think over 20 years that we're here to do a business forum. And at a business forum, we wanted to take the opportunity to help each one of our businesses understand what the other businesses do. So a lot of people ask me what BASF does. Well, we've got a quick video here rather than listen to me talk about it that might be more entertaining. So Ron, if you want to kick off that video.
Whether it's the shoes we wear for running, the car we drive, or the chairs we sit in, today we expect products that combine aesthetics, functionality, and performance. Choosing the right material for a product is one of the most complex choices designers, developers, and engineers have to make. The right material is a crucial factor for market success, differentiation, and also cost and energy efficiency of the final product. For almost all industries, plastics are the materials of the 21st century. Only a few years ago, they were regarded as lesser value alternatives to other materials, such as metal or wood. Nowadays, plastics are stronger and lighter than steel, more attractive and colorful than wood, and offer almost unlimited design freedom. We at BASF have bundled our complete know-how of high-performance plastics and foams under one roof. This makes us the leading partner for almost all industries when it comes to those materials. But for us and for our customers, just being big is far from being the best. We understand what drives our customers and their customers. That is why we don't rest on the laurels of our material portfolio. We help to create chemistry between inspiration and innovation. Our experts in application development come from a culture of innovation. They get their kicks from finding out how things work and how they can make them work better and get our customers to market faster. Computer-aided design allows us to work on the finest details to optimize products at the earliest stages. It lets us avoid pitfalls in tool design, production processes, and post-production performance. Accelerate time to market. For us, creating chemistry means more than just inventing molecules. It means connecting people and their ideas, translating inspiration into innovation, connecting high performance and efficient production. In short, enabling better designs, making better products for everyone, everywhere.
BASF, we create chemistry.
All right, thank you. I'm sure that was more entertaining than listening to me try to describe that. I do want to highlight, though, just one development that you saw there were the running shoes. And this is a very high-performance material that actually we're just starting to produce here in Wyandotte. And it's one of our big innovations, and it's going to really, I think, create the next future for Wyandotte. Here we're making a lot of polymers and plastics and the materials that are then downstream applications of that. Got a lot of technology people and business people that help support that. So a little introduction there. We also want to invite you to take a sample. We brought some of our plastic samples over here and polymer samples, so please grab one of those on your way out and a little bit of information about BSF. All right, with that, it's my pleasure, my honor to introduce Rich Studley.
I gotta do a couple more things.
As soon as Ron does what he wants to do.
Thank you, Greg. I'm gonna invite Greg to come back up in just a couple of minutes. But I do want to recognize some very important people, and I know we do a lot of recognitions at these events, but these are key people in our community, so it's very important to me and very important to, I think, our entire chamber. But first, starting with our elected officials, and we tried to catch everybody as they were coming in, but if I miss anybody, please let me know. But starting with the mayor of my hometown, the city of Riverview, Mayor Andy Swift. And then also I want to recognize, and hold your applause to the end, thank you. But Tim Duran, former mayor of the city of Riverview, of course, is with us today. David Glabe, the township supervisor of Huron Township, and Brian Peters, the clerk of Brownstown Township. Let's give them a round of applause. So, of course, we represent 21 communities in Southern Wayne County, so we're very grateful for the strong relationship we have with all 21 communities. Also want to recognize my special guest today. We have a great partnership with our chambers across the region, and I want to recognize my guests here from our partner chambers, beginning with Betsy Krapitz and Patty Braden, who is the president of the Romulus Chamber, and I'm sorry, Betsy is the executive director of the Romulus Chamber. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you for being here. We also have a good friend of mine, Doug Wallace, the membership development director for the Plymouth Community Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Doug, for being here. And of course, the individual who's showing me up at the Dearborn Chamber and doing a fantastic job, having replaced or filled my previous position, the Director of Events and Media Relations with the Dearborn Area Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Zach Hayward. Thank you, Zach. And a wonderful friend of mine and my mentor for many years, the President of the Dearborn Area Chamber, Jackie Lovejoy. And also we have Craig DeLeon, who's the board chair of the Dearborn Area Chamber of Commerce. Thank you, Craig, for being here. And I couldn't do my job without the support of our executive board members, and I want to recognize them. And you can hold your applause to the end for this one. David Goodwin, the chairman of our board of directors, the immediate past chair, Greg Flum, our first vice president, Kathy Kane, second vice president, Robert Jones, our treasurer, Chriselle Kohler, and I know Chriselle is here, I saw her, secretary, Ronnie Ruel, Tony Arminiak, Chris Baran, Rob Bovitz, Carol Krumer, and Madeline Williams. Thank you so much for your support. And our attending board members, David Glabe, Frank Lopez, I saw Frank, hi Frank, Jeff Rankin, and Linda Stanko. Thank you so much. And the last recognition I want to do before I invite Greg back up is I want to recognize our tremendous staff who really do a fantastic job every day and with every event, of course, that we hold here at the Chamber. But beginning with Rich Lindow, our Events and Operations Director, Mary Jarosh, who you all know, who puts on some fantastic forums, our forum coordinator, Aubrey Baker, who's our intern, and starting in 1 week from today, our new Membership Development Director, Jessica Pinto. So thank you so much. So at this time, I'd like to invite Greg to introduce today's guest speaker.
All right, thanks, Ron. So, again, it's my honor, my pleasure to introduce Rich Studley, current president and CEO of the Michigan Chamber of Commerce. Rich joined the Chamber of Commerce in 1981, the Michigan Chamber, and had various degrees, bigger responsibilities, kept moving up, and immediately prior to being president and CEO was the executive vice president of the Chamber. Had a lot of experience with lobbying efforts, with taxation and labor relations in the early years. Also, Rich is part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. He's on the board of directors for the U.S. Chamber and served as the chairman for the U.S. Chamber Committee of 100, representing the top 100 state and local chambers of commerce in the country, and as chair of the U.S. Chamber's Accreditation Committee for State and Local Chambers. Fantastic representation for the state of Michigan. The Michigan Chamber of Commerce is accredited by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce in recognition of sound operations and an effective legislative and political agenda. The Michigan Chamber received a rating of accredited with distinction, putting it among the top 3% of chambers nationwide. Michigan is one of only 6 state chambers with this accreditation. The local chamber has over 6,800 members, 39 full-time employees, and one of the largest and most effective state chambers in the country. The Michigan Chamber represents companies of every size, type, in 83 of Michigan's counties. We were talking a little bit about the difficulty of the UP and the Lower Peninsula together, but represents that well. And these companies that are part of the chamber represent 1.5 million jobs, 1.5 million residents that are part of the companies that the chamber represents. And consistently, I think for many, many years, and just recently in June of this year, was rated #1 member lobbying organization in the state of Michigan. So, Rich was born in Pontiac, Illinois, grew up in Kalamazoo, graduated from Portage Central High. I won't mention the years here. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree from Alma College, and in May 1993, he received a Master of Science in Administration from Central Michigan University. I'll also say that last year, or a couple years ago, he received an honorary doctorate of laws from Northwood University as a result of his work there. Also, in January of 2015, Rich was appointed by Governor Snyder to serve an 8-year term as a member of the Board of Trustees for Central Michigan University. So it's my honor, my privilege to have Rich come up here and recognize all your great service to the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ron. Yes, I'm old. I was thinking on the way down that, and some of you know this, one of my very first speaking engagements as a young employee at the Michigan Chamber was to come here to visit with the Southern Wayne County Regional Chamber of Commerce. And you've been kind enough to invite me back on a regular basis. Mary tells me that she'll keep inviting me back until I get this presentation right. So I just want to thank you for your leadership and your friendship and your encouragement and support. I want to thank Ron and all of the people today at this table. Your leadership is essential. And I want to thank the sponsors. If there's one thing chamber execs know, it's that events like this don't happen without encouragement and support from sponsors. So thank you all. At BASF, they say we create chemistry. And I couldn't help but think as I watched the video that that's what chambers of commerce do. BASF wouldn't be a worldwide leader in chemistry if it was just about mixing chemicals. It's not just about putting chemicals or materials together. It's about people. It's about leadership. It's about synergy. It's about innovation. It is about the focus on the customer and the community. Chambers of commerce create chemistry. And that's really what it's all about in terms of developing our communities, promoting our regions, and moving the state forward. I do serve as chairman of the accrediting board for the local chambers and state chambers across the country. I've gotten to travel around the country. I've met state and local chambers from across the country and, frankly, around the world. And you are blessed to have extraordinary local chamber leadership here and in this region. To see partners here today to provide encouragement and support, that doesn't happen everywhere around the state. I'd also be remiss if I didn't honor Dr. Zelli and his service on the State Board of Education. We had a chance to visit a little bit earlier today, and I told him I would pray for him, and he looked at me because that's not ordinarily the way it works, but I did explain to him that I spent a week one afternoon at the State Board of Education and never went back. But that was under a previous superintendent and a dramatically different State Board of Education. So you should feel honored to have someone here today who's accepted that challenge of leadership and is really focused on lifting up the amazing students and administrators we have throughout the state. Sometimes the challenge with K through 12 education is you've just got a lot of amazing people who are stuck in a very traditional, very bureaucratic system, and we have to work with those teachers and school administrators to challenge them, but to support those who lead with innovation and leadership and a focus on the customer. So thank you. When we're in school, you're taught that there are three branches of government: legislative, executive, and judicial. Tom Donahue, the president of the U.S. Chamber, often now talks about how there are four branches of government: legislative, executive, judicial, and regulatory. Those non-elected, non-appointed officials, especially at the federal level, whether they work for the Environmental Protection Agency or the U.S. Department of Labor or the U.S. Department of Agriculture, those individuals who think it is their job to write and rewrite the law and to regulate everything that moves. And then if it stops moving, to subsidize it or tax it. And so my wife and I are both former state employees. There are a lot of amazing people who work for state government, but again, sometimes like education, you have very good, hardworking people trapped in systems that don't reward innovation or creativity or even decision making. And so that's a challenge that we face in the public sector and in the private sector as we move forward together. In Lansing, people like to talk about the legislative process as though there is one legislative process. We have a bicameral legislature with a state house and the Michigan Senate. Even though they're in the same building, sometimes if the legislature's in session, you might think that there are two very different legislatures as you move back and forth to the House and Senate. Some lawmakers would tell you that there are two legislative processes. One is the regular process that we read about in the paper, and the other is the appropriations committees and the budget process that have their own nomenclature, their own schedule, their own timeline. There's a lot of good news to share with you from Lansing. One is that for the 7th year in a row, the legislature has adopted a balanced budget, not just on time, but early. It wasn't that long ago. Yes? It wasn't that long ago when the Michigan legislature either missed the deadline entirely, which is very challenging for local government and public schools, or they adopted budgets that everyone knew were not balanced. And so Democrats and Republicans in the House and Senate have made a lot of progress. The theme I want to share with you today is that there's actually a third legislative process, and that is initiative and referendum. You should have some handouts at your table. There's an old saying sometimes in sports that you can't tell the players without a scorecard. So I brought you the official scorecard today from the Secretary of State's office on the players who think that they should bypass the legislative process and go directly to the people with initiative legislation, or people who think that the state constitution of 1963 needs to be revised and updated. Now, I want to be very clear with you that it's a good thing to be one of 20 or 21 states that have initiative and referendum. But if you read the notes from the drafters of the 1963 state constitution, it is clear that their intent was that we reserve, as the people, the right of initiative or referendum, but that those would only be used sparingly, that they would be safety valves. If the legislature had acted in haste and made a mistake prematurely that they couldn't correct, we reserve the right to, if enough people agree, to suspend that legislation and take it to a vote at the next general election. If the legislature refused to act, and we almost came to that point a couple of years ago with endless debate over how to fix the roads. If you were stuck in traffic getting here today, you know that we're making some progress on fixing the roads, and that's a good thing, even though it's a little frustrating when you're stuck behind construction equipment. We also, unlike many states, have the ability as citizens to initiate amendments to our state constitution. In many states, it is difficult or impossible to amend the state constitution without calling a constitutional convention, which can be a lengthy and a difficult process. So again, that is a good thing. But part of the challenge we have in Michigan is that we have remarkably low signature requirements. The threshold for putting a proposal on the ballot is so low that we have invited out-of-state groups with national agendas to parachute people and money into Michigan to put proposals on the ballot that may or may not be a good idea, but then they get to leave and go on to another state as they hopscotch across the country, often trying to put pressure on Congress to enact legislation. So when we think about initiative and referendum and constitutional amendments, this year we are required to collect 315,654 signatures to amend the state constitution. When people talk about a petition drive or a ballot proposal to amend the Constitution, if they are serious about putting a proposal on the ballot, they should be talking about collecting probably at least 350, more likely 375 or 400,000 signatures to amend the Constitution. Why is that? People sign multiple petitions. People sign petitions with clever names. People sign petitions who don't live in Michigan, people who sign petitions who are not registered voters. And so you may be stopped on a street corner during the next few weeks and months as people begin to look ahead to the 2018 election to say, sign a petition. Do you care about the Great Lakes? Would you sign a petition to protect the Great Lakes? Well, if that's all the petition said, I would sign. But part of my message to you today is this is an extraordinary right that we have as citizens. But please stop, read, and think. And when in doubt, don't sign. You're almost certain to have another opportunity. And if you help put a proposal on the ballot that you find later you're opposed to, it's too late. You have started the snowball rolling down the hill, and when ballot proposals are approved, there's no debate. They're law, or they're part of the state constitution, and we might have to live with those changes for 5, 10, 15, 20 years or more. So be careful before you sign. For an initiative statute, again, when the legislature doesn't do their job or they make a mistake, signature collection this year calls for 252,000 signatures. Again, to be safe, a serious proposal is probably going to try to collect 275,000 or 300,000 signatures. You can circulate a petition as a volunteer. That's a great thing. I encourage you. If there is a cause you believe in, do your homework. Look carefully at who is in favor of the proposal. What does it actually say? One of the things we've learned over the past few years at the Michigan Chamber is there are a surprising number of voters who, when you go to the polls and see that 100-word description, that's a summary of the proposal that is written by the 4-member state board of canvassers, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and they're good people and they try hard, but that is not the proposal. It is important, especially with constitutional amendments, to get a copy, which is not hard to do these days, over the internet of the actual proposal. And you'd be surprised sometimes how easy the proposals are to read, or at least key provisions. And so again, look before you leap. Why is there so much early interest in petition drives and ballot proposals in 2017, which is a non-election year? Well, the 2018 election has already started, with individuals and groups looking ahead, people who have ideas that don't have popular support, seeking to bypass the legislative process entirely, or people with ideas that they believe in strongly who are frustrated and discouraged and want to get in the express lane to listen to you. So it's a tremendous right, but it's also a tremendous responsibility. One thing I would share with you as you look at polling is that early performance does not guarantee results. Often you'll hear an individual or group who's promoting a proposal to say, this has overwhelming public support. In your head, you should be thinking to yourself, really? Who did you poll? When did you poll? Did you poll all Michigan residents? And of course, we're a great state with a lot of wonderful people, but a smaller group of people who really count are registered voters. The even smaller group who count, regardless of whether you're a Democrat or Republican, is, are you a registered voter likely to vote? And when will the proposal be on the ballot? A lot of local proposals will be on the ballot at odd times of year with very small voter turnout. The August primary next year is likely to be hotly contested in many communities, others not so much. So who will turn out in November of 2018? It's a guess at this point. But I saw a note the other day that said, on this day in Michigan history, and it was looking back at July 10th, 2000, the Michigan Municipal League, a fine organization, we work with them closely, turned in 467,000 signatures to the Secretary of State's office for a statutory initiative designed to make it harder for the state legislature to preempt local authority. It was called Let Local Votes Count, a really catchy theme that did not accurately describe the content of the legislation. After a statewide debate and vigorous campaigns on both sides, you went to the polls, and when the proposal was announced, it was announced that 67% of voters, almost 70%, gave it a thumbs up. On the day after the November election, about 2/3 of voters said no. So just because something is popular today doesn't necessarily mean that it's a good idea or that it will be approved by voters as we go forward. Another interesting thing to watch, because we could be moving toward a situation where we have 4 or 5 or 6 proposals on the ballot in November. At the same time, we'll be voting to fill seats in the State House, in the Michigan Senate, the Michigan Supreme Court. State Board of Ed, up again, Doctor?
Every 2 years.
Every 2 years. Members of Congress, and probably pretty competitive races for Attorney General, Secretary of State, and Governor. So it's not a bad time to be talking about state issues. I think that's some of what's driving this interest. But you may recall, the last time we had proposals on the ballot, 6 of them, voters approved 1 and rejected 5. I remember that because at the Michigan Chamber, we led what I refer to now as the Vote No, Kill 'Em All campaign. The other 5 proposals were amendments to the state constitution. Inadvertently, we've trained most Michigan voters to vote no on constitutional amendments because people are appropriately cautious about changing the rules of the game, and our state constitution is our most important political document. But we've also trained people to vote no because, frankly, we put a lot of crummy constitutional amendments on the ballot over the years, and as people study them carefully, they look at them and say, well, I like this part, but not that part. Maybe this was well intended, but it's not properly drafted. So politics and petition drives make for strange bedfellows. One of the things I noticed last week in downtown Lansing, there were a large group of paid circulators. And we allow in Michigan both volunteer circulators and paid circulators. We have one of the best petition management firms in the country, National Petition Management. Ordinarily, they do a good job. But they had a young person in downtown Lansing circulating petitions both to legalize marijuana and to repeal the state's prevailing wage. And when a reporter was stopped by this fellow to say, would you sign a petition, the petition circulator said, I have a petition to legalize marijuana, and I have a proposal to increase the state's minimum wage. Well, there may be a petition drive to increase the state's minimum wage, but the proposal the reporter was handed was one to repeal the state's prevailing wage requirement. So know that there is no truth in advertising requirement for petition circulators. They may say to you, would you support working families? Would you sign this petition? That may be a petition to mandate parental leave. It may or may not be a parental leave policy that would work for your company. Your company may already have an outstanding parental leave policy, so it's important, again, to think these proposals through. If you grab your scorecard, we're just going to handicap a couple of the petition drives and ballot proposals for you. Keep our lakes great. That is the first of these proposals that have been reviewed and approved as to form by the State Board of Canvassers. I apologize for using that kind of inside baseball phrase, but what does it mean to be approved as to form by the State Board of Canvassers? It means that this board, appointed by the governor with advice and consent of the Senate, 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, have said that the form of the petition drive is correct. It meets the legal requirements for type size. It meets the legal requirements for the size of the paper, that it is properly drafted, that it accurately reflects the content of the proposal. It's not a requirement that you do that, but if you're approved as to form, you are protected from litigation on technical points, that your proposal is technically flawed. The font size was wrong. You didn't accurately describe the proposal. So we have several proposals before us. There are 5 potential proposals that have been approved or are going forward. 4 out of 5 have been approved as to form. 1 proponent has chosen not to because there is a dispute about the language, and it's anticipated that there will be litigation regardless. 4 out of 5 of the proposals are statutory initiatives. If enough voters agree that a law should be changed through a petition drive, it goes to the legislature. The legislature has a certain period of time to approve the proposal. If they approve it, it becomes law. The governor can't sign or veto. If they take no action, the proposal automatically goes on the ballot at the next general election. The legislature also has the option to put a competing proposal on the ballot. So sometimes one proposal will morph into 2 proposals with either minor or major differences. The first proposal is called Keep Our Lakes Great. How many of you are in favor of keeping our lakes great? Show of hands. I vote yes. How many of you would be in favor of a severe and immediate propane shortage for everyone who lives and works in the Upper Peninsula? No one. I'm not surprised, but what this proposal is about is a statutory initiative that would have the immediate effect of shutting down Line 5, an oil and gas and propane pipeline that starts in Canada, travels through several western states, crosses the Upper Peninsula,